Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by kids with incredible taste in outdated music, because every witty kid memorizes obscure 90s bands. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everyone to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Chatty Chelsea, the doll that knows it all. Kick back with Chatty Chelsea. Welcome everyone to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And you know the deal. We're filmmakers. We write, we make things, we act in front of the camera, in front of microphones, and we do post work. Todd's a musician, and of course we're fans. We're movie fans. We're story fans, and I know everyone's excited to hear us talk a little bit more about Arcane, but there was something that occurred to me this past week. So we did the last episode, and it was so good. And I think we had another like 2 to 3 hours in us.
Oh man, I could have talked to him forever.
And so what I realized after doing our Arcane episode, not Heretic, it was that the community, having a community to talk to people about something that you love, adds a whole other layer to it. And so for me, like for 3 years, I'd been like dying about this show and didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And so it was just like me in a cocoon, just kind of like, yeah, this is great. And then, season 2 comes out and everyone like watches it. Like I even tried to get Ian to watch it, and he's an animation guy, but I think he didn't watch it for different reasons, because he is an animation guy, and me coming to him and saying like, dude, there's an animation show you need to watch. He just kind of pushes his glasses up. That's not my style. And so if I like it by default, he's not going to put it on. Like I don't get to recommend that to him. I think that was a little bit of it. And then he watched it like in a day. He had been putting it off for 3 years. And then I hung out with him like one night, and he was like, yeah, so I watched it. And I was like, oh, where are you at? He's like, no, I watched it all, both all today. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, good God, man.
That is a lot.
That's a lot. But what's so cool is like, and then Scott rewatched it, and I took a road trip with him like a year and a half ago. We were just talking about all kinds of stuff, video games and TV shows and movies, and Arcane came up, and I was like, oh, finally someone else who's watched this thing, and got really excited to talk about it. And he was like, he just kind of nodded for a second. He's like, yeah, no, it's really good. And that was kind of the entire conversation.
Oh, that's kind of a letdown.
It was. I was like, oh, okay. So maybe this just isn't that good of a show, and it's just really me. And that's okay. I will just shut the hell up and stop, bothering people. And then like it exploded. Like season 2, I think gave it fresh legs. And I think you had a motivation from the music side. And then Scott realized I didn't really watch it, I don't think.
Yeah.
And rewatching it, it just flipped a switch. And then for the past week, the 3 of us, I've just been like nonstop, like going at it.
You asked some great questions on the thread. I'm like, that's an interesting thing.
And you had some like badass thoughts and ideas. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. And it's just the cool part about it is it's letting us live in that universe a little while longer. Like, and it gives us more ideas about when we rewatch it, like, oh, that's what Todd was talking about, and I see what he means now. Or it just adds so much more to the experience of enjoying this one thing. And it's kind of a silly thing, but to me, it also makes so much sense. We're just social creatures. And by virtue of adding community to it, suddenly this thing that I really, really liked, like now it's just 10 times more enjoyable because other people are enjoying it alongside me. And that's just a really cool thing that media and film and storytelling can do for you, right? It's just bring a community together in a way that lets you like something even more than you liked it before. That's interesting. A new wrinkle I hadn't really considered before.
Yeah, well, I think that it's if nothing else, it corroborates your feeling on the thing. This is what you're talking about. Of you're a little bit let down that not everybody is freaking out about this thing that you absolutely adore and love, and you just want to shake everybody, right? Like, wait a minute, no, it's not just good. Did you really watch it? Or Todd, what are you doing sleeping on this? Like, come on, like I want to talk to you about this. And then when finally we catch up to you and we see it, and we see it for what it is, not just see it, but like we really see it, and we come to you and say, we finally watched that thing that you told us about 2 years ago, and we love it as much as you do. Now, all of a sudden, it just makes you feel like not necessarily just validated, but that you've got, but that you've got, you've got an outlet to then bounce ideas off of thoughts and like say, oh, and what about this moment? What did you think of this? I have my thoughts, but how did you take it? Or did you I said in the thread that we were talking about, did you know that this part was her thing or whatever? And you were like, no, I didn't. I was like, neither did I. And I just noticed it. And it just sparks another little fire. And I think that it's great with anything creative, whether that's music. I mean, usually a lot of times it's music, right? Because it's the easiest, fastest thing to digest. Oh my God, did you hear this song? It's 3.5 minutes, It's not like I got to spend 8 hours watching a show and then tell you, hey, go watch this 8-hour show. So like music is a good one, books, I mean, anything really, but like a lot of times the creative aspect you get of an asset, you get much more, I guess, mileage and like your heart flutters a little bit more when somebody that you admire and love also loves this thing that you love, right? So when Wes says, guys, you have to go watch Arcane, it will blow your mind, and then I do it, it's different than if my neighbor were to say, oh, you've got to go watch this. It comes with a little more leverage, and then it's just validated a little bit when that person that you admire still loves it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I wasn't even thinking of it in those terms, but I think you're absolutely right. It's like, it's a connection, right? I'm throwing you a line. And when you grab it, like suddenly I feel validated that you took time to watch something, but also that you liked it as much. Because that happens too, right? Where I'm like, you should check this out. And you're just like, it's okay. I don't know what to tell you, bud. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And that happens.
It does.
And that happens, man,
But
it does.
I think the other aspect, as you were talking about it, I didn't think about too, is that's the normal historical way we've enjoyed things, is as a community, right? Obviously, we used to, growing up, you'd go to the movies with friends. Like, it was pretty rare for me to go to a movie by myself. Like, I don't know if I did that until I was in my mid-20s. And so growing up, if a TV show was happening, everyone else would have been watching it. So even if you did watch that TV show by yourself, you'd go to school and then everyone else would have been watching it. But even going further back, if you go to the theater, that's a communal event. Like, everyone's going to the theater to watch this one story, to watch this one play. Or probably going back to like the fire, like campfires, sitting around and creating stories to help you get through the night or whatever is happening there. Like, you don't know, you can't see, your eyes can't penetrate the darkness anymore. And so maybe those stories help you prepare mentally, or provide some catharsis about how everything's going to be okay and you're going to make it to tomorrow or whatever. I'm just projecting there, obviously. But there's probably something to that too. Like, we're in an age now where it's more normal than not to watch something by yourself, and then go hunting for community to discuss it and enjoy it with. And that's kind of fascinating too, because I don't know where that leads us, or if we eventually circle back to some kind of more social setting, because it looks like theaters are just more and more struggling by the year.
Oh yeah. So I used to have, where I live, I used to have 3 options to go to. I have 1 now. Whoa. In the last 3 years, 2 of the 3 theaters in my area have shut down. And we're talking AMC, like not
Whoa.
mom and pops. So yeah, they are struggling for sure. You know, you have directors like Villeneuve and Nolan, who, you know, they are the only reason why theaters are still around. Let's be honest. You know, like there's more, you know, but I would say there's probably like 5 or 6 big directors who do big new story films that or you know, like I'm going to count Dune in there because it's just so new. That are keeping people going to the theaters. But it's hard. It really is. But to circle back with what you were saying about, you know, searching for community, it's funny because I think, you know, as human beings, we do that, right? We want to, and I don't think it's necessarily because we always want someone to corroborate that what we love is good. I used to think that, you know, when I was growing up and younger, I was like, I think this is good, but does everybody else think it's good? And that, you know, like, you know, I need that validation. And I still think I do sometimes, like if I'm not sure, like if I have a feeling about a film or a show and the feeling is kind of either lukewarm or I'm 51% this, or I'm, you know, I'm kind of on the fence, I'm not sure, but I have my opinions, you know, other people aren't going to sway my opinions, but, you know, does this really hit on a societal level? You know, like, do other people also resonate with this? I'm curious. But then I also have shows or movies like Arcane, which I don't give a shit if anybody else likes it. I don't care. I love what other people think about moments in it, and, you know, finding insight into things, and that's cool. I guess that's the community that matters to me in terms of like Arcane, but I love it so much. And so we have these levels, right? Of like, I care, I'm interested, I don't give a shit at all what anybody else thinks because I love it so much. And those are the ones that stick with me forever. I don't care what anyone thinks of Interstellar.
Yeah.
Zero, like at all. I don't even care what you think of Interstellar. You can wake up tomorrow and be like, I hate that movie. I've seen it so many times. I'm over it. You're like, Godspeed, my friend. You know, like that's fine. Totally fine. I'm going to love it till the day I die. And Arcane is definitely one of those. But to your point about community, it's wonderful to find that community because then you can go do that deep dive. You know, in a show where the deeper you dive, the more you find.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about having a robust community that will never go away. I mean, I think years from now, they'll be finding little Easter eggs or little nuggets. And did you realize this? And be like, oh my God, it's 2027 and I didn't realize that. Wow, that's nuts. How did I not see that before? There are some great albums that do that. I mean, Pink Floyd has done that. I think you still hear stuff in Pink Floyd albums that you haven't heard in 30 years. Zeppelin does that. Like, art is really great when there are things that are unnoticeable unless you put in the time and the effort to notice them. And those are the best ones, right? Like, I went to see Interstellar this week with Simon in IMAX, which I've never seen in IMAX, by the way. We didn't get to see 70 millimeter because they sold out, you know, instantly. But just seeing it in IMAX, I mean, it's pretty much ruined my movie-going experience for anything else. Yeah. And Simon, he said afterwards, he goes, I was sweating. I was on the edge of my seat. There were moments, he said, where I found myself leaning forward and I looked around. Oh man, I got to lean back. And I saw things in the film and in IMAX that I, you know, felt new, even though I've seen that movie 70 times. It felt new seeing it in that setting, you know, with my son next to me. So the best art lasts, you know. Anyway,
that's so true. The best art does last. And all of the effort that goes into it will not have been in vain. And it's such a weird curve of, okay, I can do what I need to get this thing made, or I can take a little bit longer, and it takes more of my life and more of my effort and more of my focus and maybe a little bit more money, but probably more of the other things more than anything. And hope that it connects with somebody enough that they appreciate and go to those levels. But at the same time, most films aren't going to do that. And therefore, most films also do not last.
Yeah.
How many films came out in the last 5 years that we'll still be talking about, 15 years from now? Probably not many.
Not many.
And so it's really cool. And I hope that, when we cover a film that someone loves, it gives them that same kind of rush of, oh, good, I get to sit in this universe a little bit longer just by virtue of hearing people talk about it and discuss it and analyze it, love the characters, hate some characters, or kind of scratch that itch of, but that moment really bothered me. Okay, good. Other people, it bothered someone else. Good. I can stop obsessing over it and I can focus on all the other things that I love. Or something like, I don't know. That's kind of what I've gotten this past week is like, I got to extend my time with that show, even though the show's ended, like it's two and done. But the time I got to spend in that headspace has been virtually extended forever. I don't know how long, we'll keep going, but I'm sure at some point it'll ebb. But then eventually we'll circle back around to it and then be like, wait, we got to go back.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So what universe are we diving into today, man?
Today we are diving into the Wes Anderson universe. Finally, 303 episodes in. We'll be covering Rushmore, 1998, 1999. So if you haven't seen this film, please pause it and go watch it because we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we are. We'll look at some of the cinematography. We'll discuss the center framing, kind of that symmetry thing that really is what he's known for at this point. And as well as some story and writing. We'll talk about the dry humor, the heart, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
Yeah. And a quick synopsis of the film. A teenager at Rushmore Academy falls for a much older teacher and befriends a middle-aged industrialist. After he finds out that his love interest and his friend are having an affair, he begins a vendetta. It's created by Wes Anderson. Screenplay by Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson. Cinematography by Robert Yeoman. It's featuring Jason Schwartzman as Max Fischer, Bill Murray as Herman Blume, Olivia Williams as Rosemary Cross, Brian Cox as Dr. Guggenheim, Mason Gamble as Dirk Calloway, and Sara Tanaka as Margaret Yang.
Max? Mm-hmm? Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Has it ever crossed your mind that you're far too young for me?
It crossed my mind that you might consider that a possibility, yeah.
Quite apart from the fact that you're a student.
I'm not trying to pressure you into anything, Miss Cross. But I'm surprised you brought it up so bluntly.
I just want to make sure.
We've become friends, haven't we?
Yes.
Good. And, the truth is, neither one of us have the slightest idea where this relationship is going. We can't predict the future.
We don't have a relationship, Max.
But we're friends.
Yes, and that's all we're going to be.
That's all I meant by relationship. You want me to grab a dictionary?
No, I just want to make sure that we understand each other.
I understand. You're not attracted to me. C'est la vie.
Max, you're 15 years old. Attraction doesn't enter into it.
If you say so. Look, all I'm getting at is that I've never met anyone like you. So you can take that for whatever it's worth.
I think I can safely say I've never met anyone like you either.
You haven't, have you? Want to shake hands? I'm glad we had this conversation.
So am I.
So, Todd, I'm sure you've got many thoughts. One, where does this sit in your Wes Anderson oeuvre rankings? And to what was it like filming? Like, do you remember anything? Because you're in one of these scenes. I'm curious if you can spot yourself. I think you said that you have, and that you remember some of that day. So I'd be interested to hear how you got looped into this world in the first place. Todd officially exists in the Wes Anderson universe.
Barely. Just so barely. Yeah. So I was, this is shot in Houston in Memorial area. I went to school at St. Thomas, which is right around the corner. So they shot this at Bel Air High School, and they came over the PA at the end of a day and said, or maybe it was like at lunch, and they said, hey, if you want to get out early, a little bit early, you can go to Bel Air High School and be in a movie. I was like, okay, sure, why not? I always liked movies, and went to movies and stuff, but I wasn't like crazy about like wanting to be in them or anything. So, but it was cool. So we just showed up there. They said, actually, they came over the intercom maybe earlier in the week or the day before or something and said, hey, bring a white shirt and like blue pants or something if you want to be in this movie, and you can leave at 2:00 and go over there. And so I did, went over there with a bunch of people, and they kind of corralled us into this church or like hall or whatever you want to call it. I guess it was church. And we went in, we sat down, and they told us, okay, we're going to cue you to stand up. But there was a guy up there at the podium speaking. Saw the camera. I didn't know that it was Bill Murray. I barely knew who Bill Murray was at the time. I just wasn't like that. I don't know. But it was Bill Murray. So I'm in the shot where not the opening shot, but the shot after his daydream scene where he solves the equation, where he's faced up at the camera, and then the camera pans down to reveal that he was asleep in the church, and then it's a wide shot of all the kids. So I'm on the left hand side, I would say 2/3 of the way back. It's a good shot of my face, but it's very small. So on the left-hand side, 2/3 of the way back, about in the middle of the pew kind of area. And then so I get shown twice because they do that wide, and then they cut to Bill Murray doing his speech or whatever, and then they cut to the wide again of all the kids as they stand up. That's it. And then that was it. So they shuffle us in. They do that a couple of times. I think they did it like maybe 4 times, maybe.
Wow.
I don't remember being there very long. I was probably there for like a couple of hours, maybe at the most a couple of hours. And
then
no
pay. No pay.
No pay.
Okay.
Of course not. No, you just get to be in a Wes Anderson movie. But the whole point was to stay very still. Like normally in a scene like in real life, you have kids, whispering and talking and just kind of shuffling in their seats and everything. But I remember the direction was be as still as possible. And so and I follow direction really well. So when you see me, like if you see me, I'm like a deer in the headlights, just not moving at all. That was it. And I didn't know what it was or anything like that. And I think it was probably because it came out the next year, because I was 18 when I graduated, and I was a senior when I shot this, or when I was in this, and then it came out in 99, so it came out a year later. And I remember, I think I was in college when I realized that, that was the movie, because somebody told me that they shot it in Houston, and I thought, was it that I was in that thing at Bel Air High? Okay. Interesting. And then I went and watched it. It's like, oh my God. And then the scene, the kite scene at the end.
Yeah.
In that parking lot of the stadium. So that was Memorial Stadium. So that stadium, I would drive past that stadium every morning to go to school. And we had events and stuff in that stadium parking lot. On the other side of that parking lot was a mall. where I go and buy all of my records, my CDs when I would have enough money to buy a CD. So I drove past there every time. So I noticed a bunch of stuff in this movie. I didn't know where I was trying to really place where his dad's barbershop was, and I couldn't place that. But the grounds of the high school and the kite scene I was very familiar with.
Dude, that's so cool.
It was cool.
And obviously, y'all standing perfectly still adds so much more animation to Jason Schwartzman whenever he stands up and starts like clapping and doing his whole silly bit.
And I remember that. I remember him
you're
standing
like,
up and clapping. Like, what is this? Okay, cool. I just was like, I don't know what this is. So I didn't know anything about movies at the time, man. Like nothing. Yeah. So it was fun.
Dope, man. That's so cool. Well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah. All in a day's work.
Because, like, I don't know where Rushmore falls and how you actually feel about the movie, but this is my favorite Wes Anderson movie. I don't think there is a close second. It's the only one I've seen more than once, I'm pretty sure. And so, yeah, by far. Like, so it's cool that my best friend is in my favorite Wes Anderson film.
You don't think that there's one even close? That's interesting.
I don't. Right. There's some others that are really good. Like Sisu is really good, obviously. I liked Moonrise Kingdom. Maybe it ran a little long. And Grand Budapest Hotel is just fantastic. And Fantastic Mr. Fox. Otherwise, they're all just solid. And a few that I just don't think are good at all. But yeah.
Well, then let me start by asking you, why is this your favorite Wes Anderson film?
Because it's the least Wes Anderson film that he's made.
Agreed. You are right, good sir.
Like it just ramps up the further into his, library that you get, the less it feels like any other movie, and the more it feels like at a certain point a hat on top of a hat. And to be fair, that's what you show up for. And you're like, okay, I'm going to enter into this universe. But at this point, it feels like he's just kind of memeing himself. And I'm not big on comedies in the first place. And it just feels like this is the only one. And maybe I need to just revisit them, to be fair. But this feels like the only one that actually has any heart in it. Like, you get to the end and you're like, these characters have grown. Like, specifically Max. Max has grown, and I don't feel like that's normal for a Wes Anderson movie. I feel like they're all kind of stunted, Arrested Development kind of characters, and he doesn't feel arrested at all. Like he felt like he really understood something about himself at last, and that affected the way he started treating everyone. Because he's such a wrecking ball. Like this kid, everything he touches turns to trash. Like he just destroys everything. Even the things that he fixes, he's only fixing it because he wrecked it. Like the Latin, right? That was going away because he got it to go away. And so him saving it wasn't saving it. He saved it from himself.
I saved Latin. What did you do? Honestly, great writing.
Yeah.
Great writing. How do you convince your mentor, who is of age to date this woman that you care about, and you're not, that what he's doing is not in her best interest? I saved Latin. What did you do? Nothing. He did nothing. He wasn't worthy of her either. He was freaking married. So anyway, great writing.
Yeah, great writing. Even though I think his wife was having an affair, they kind of.
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't make him right for it, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's a great point.
And they call that out a little bit by the scene of him telling her, which I love that you don't get to hear him tell her. Because the ambulance comes by. So does he tattle on him? Yes, he does, because in the very next scene he's getting a divorce. But yeah. Anyway, keep going. I have other things though.
Yeah. So that, I mean, you're pointing out, how Blume doesn't do anything. That's such a great point. At the end of the day, in fact, in some ways he's less of a person, right? He basically lost all his money trying to win her over because it didn't work. That's not really what she wanted. What she wanted was for him to basically just like himself. And I guess it's Max who gets him there. Helps him like see something worthy in himself. He becomes the project for Max to work on. And he begins, that's such a subtle shift in there that all he really needed to do is just be okay with being himself. And he helps him there. Yeah. So I think the humor here works for the most part, like for me. I think the first time I watched it, in the mid 2000s probably, I really liked the humor. I found it really, really funny and fresh. The opening with him founding and co-founding like 50 different, organizations, was really funny to me. And it spoke to this kind of quirky character, as well as later on him finding out, because every one of those was either president or founder. And so at the very end, whenever you see co-founder, that's a really cool moment for him to like be giving up ownership a little bit and sharing some authority with someone else. That's a really subtle little nod to him, again, having growth as a character. And so this clicks so well for me. And the humor has kind of gotten worse as time has gone on because of not just the repetition of Wes Anderson himself, but also how easy it is to mimic. Like, the writing is what made this so good with the characters, and that's what makes it endure still. But all those other elements, that kind of dry humor that feels like 50% British humor and 50% like juvenile American humor, blending together, like that is a very easy formula to rinse and repeat. And the only way that it still kind of works is Wes Anderson is just more creative at it than a lot of other people, but it doesn't stop it from being diluted by the volume of other people trying to tap into the same world. That's still, it's fine. Like, other people do it and it's okay. Like Submarine, I think, is another example of that, of someone taking the same heartbeat and style. And so, I think that's what doesn't quite hit for me anymore. And like watching it now with that little montage of like, that's still like, oh, okay, that's funny, but it doesn't get to me. Whereas those other moments that really hit me and get me laughing are like the brash, like gall of some of these characters. Like the kid, whenever he sees Blume and stops him in the street and calls him out for breaking Max's heart. And I don't want to let him know, you're a terrible person. And he spits on the hood of the car. Like, that's really funny to me. And that still like gets me because that's performance. I mean, it's good writing and it's just good blocking, right? The comedy is in the wides idea. And so we're in this medium wide frame of this kid spitting on the car. And so it allows for like the scene to kind of play out, and the timing sits there, and it's just really good perspective of everything visually, right? To stay broad, and a little distance also makes it a little less personal, a little less gross. And it lets you see like the situation kind of unfold. And those are all great elements for comedy. And that combination of his writing style and his directing style and the just casting, like that's really good casting. And maybe you do 20 of those takes to get just the right awkward beat of it, I guess. So those are kind of the still moments that work for me, but I don't know if that really answers your question, but it works for me in so many ways. What you've been attached to this longer than I have probably. And so I'm curious if it's still funny to you or if it got funnier over time. And does his humor still, like, do you still show up excited for a Wes Anderson film? Or is it just kind of like, oh, it's fine. I'll catch it when I catch it.
It's good questions. I don't know that if the humor really has gotten any funnier for me. I think it's entertaining. I've never found, that's not true. There are specific moments in Wes Anderson stuff that I find hilarious, and you're totally right. And I never thought about that the comedy is in the wides. That makes perfect sense. The kid spitting on the car is not funny if it's in 2 cuts of him spitting and then the shot of you absolutely need like if you close up on him spitting and then a close up on the car with the spit on, it's not as funny as just one wide shot of it happening. Of course, it's hilarious. I think it's brilliant. I never thought about it that way, but that's very much where he lives. And I really agree with you that I identify with this movie, not because it's Wes Anderson, not because it's funny, but because of the character development. I think it's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. My favorite part, I almost teared up, honestly, is when he shoots the bully with the BB gun and then invites him to be in his play. And you see the bully, he wants to kick his ass. He's ready to just wallop him. But Max is not scared at all, throws him his script, and you see him soften. So, and then he said, I always wanted to be in one of your stupid plays. I know you did. And just the love. All of a sudden, you can tell this relationship is going to be important, like good. He's transcended the fighting between them, and we've only seen the bully pick on Max the entire time and beat him up. There has been no idea or thought to them ever reconciling or being friends. And then in one little scene that takes 2 minutes, if that, they become co-workers. Not just friends, co-workers, which is very on character with Max. I'm watching this film and I'm like, how the F does he do all of these things? How does he make the time to get the board of directors together to save Latin, and at the same time write a play, and at the same time elicit Herman for $35,000 for a new aquarium, which he only gets $2,500 for. And I think that scene is hilarious, by the way. But all of these things, how does he find time to do it? It doesn't even matter. But that's him in a nutshell, is he just does things. He gets stuff done. He moves forward. And that is moves forward through work and activism, like being active constantly. So of course, when he becomes friends with his bully, it's because he's making something. And he wants to bring this guy in. What better way to become friends with someone who you've hated than to work together? It's so brilliant, just brilliant. And I almost teared up in that moment. It was so beautiful. The whole relationship with Bill Murray and Rosemary, I thought it was just like kind of like comical. Honestly. I think she was still reeling over her husband dying and looking for somebody who looked at her a certain way, who she could also look at that way, because she can't. I think she loves who Max is. That clip you played was perfect. I think she loves who Max is, and in a different world, there might be a thing there. But because he's 15, there's no way that she's even going to entertain it. So it just can't and won't happen. And I love that it doesn't, because that's a whole nother story. But because she can't, it's been activated in her, right? This feeling of like, wanting another person. And Herman fills that, that void. Which is why when she realizes that he hates himself and he's a terrible person, actually, that she separates herself from him. But everybody comes together in the end, and everybody develops, and I think one person who doesn't need to develop is Margaret. I love her character the entire time. She just is into Max the whole time. And she just, and then that scene in the parking lot of her, "You were really terrible to me." Being able to say that to him, I think also was brilliant writing. Not only, it's so Wes Anderson how she shows up and how she leaves. It's perfect. We see the plane and then she's there. right? And then the plane flies away. Goodbye. The plane flies away, and then she's gone. We don't ever cut back to where she was. She's just gone. So that's very Wes Anderson. But her saying that, in that moment where he's had his time to sulk that he's lost Rosemary, and then he's with his old friend. He apologizes to his old friend. He's starting to come out of it a little bit. He needs a little extra push to remind him that he was not his best self. And her saying, you were unkind to me, was just what he needed. I think she says it. I need to go back and rewatch it, but I think she says it after he apologizes, or I don't know. Maybe she says it and then he apologizes, but I think he knows it before she says it. And that was just kind of what he needed. And then he starts flying the kite, and he starts coming back, getting lively, like, let's do this and let's do that and whatever. Starts dictating to his minion. So anyway, I think it's really brilliant writing. I don't look at this movie as necessarily a comedy, even though it is a comedy and there are funny aspects to it. I look at it as like, really, you're totally spot on. Character development in this is done really beautifully, in a really artistic way that doesn't hit you over the head necessarily. It could have ended in the parking lot with him flying the kite, dictating. In fact, I thought it might, that would have been a good ending too. You see him coming back. You don't know what happens. He doesn't go, he's going to do something with his life, but you don't know what it is. Just the next thing. He's not worried about 10 years from now. He's like, I'm going to start this club, and Margaret's going to be in it, and so-and-so is going to be in it, and da-da-da. And it could fade to black, Wes Anderson. But it doesn't. And it gives you a little bit more, and a lot more, actually. Gives you a ton more. You get the scene with the bully. You get him putting Rosemary and Herman together. You get him apologizing to Luke Wilson's character, whoever, the doctor, whatever. Which I didn't know that Owen Wilson co-wrote this or executive produced it or whatever. So when I saw that in the credits, I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. His brother's in it. Very
Same.
cool.
Yeah.
And then, him introducing his dad as a barber. This is my father. He's a barber. Da, da, da. And he's proud of his dad, and what he does. Because he's been talking about his dad as a doctor this whole time. Really says a lot about him, And his father is a fantastic father in this movie. You have the scene of him working in the I'll say this, I'll let you talk again, but working in the barbershop, and he's saying, have you given any thought to school? No, I haven't. I just thought, maybe you wanted to, I thought you wanted to do, want to be at in politics or whatever, do an executive or something. And he just says no, basically. Max says no. He just nods and he leaves. He's not trying to direct his son's life. He knows that his son is going to be successful at whatever he does. It's just he's sad, and he lets him be whatever he needs to be. And I think that's what it's very. I'm coming from a father who I haven't been in that situation yet because my son, he's not hasn't had that experience or experience like that. But to not try to save your kid at every turn is impossible. It's just an impossible ask. And he does it really well. So anyway, everybody grows in this movie and blooms and blossoms, and it turns out to be really wonderful. So I couldn't agree more. This is definitely my favorite Wes Anderson film for that reason. And I didn't know that was why. So when you said that, I was like, yeah, you know what? That's it. You're right.
That's so good. Man, I love what you're saying about his dad. I really didn't spend that much time thinking about him. But you're absolutely right. That's the hard. I don't know a lot of people in real life who can do that when I'm like, yeah, I'm really upset about this. Like they always, like 90% of the time they try to fix it. Like, oh, well, at least they try to shoot a silver lining over to you. Yeah, well, at least, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, that's great, bud. But like, I'm not ready for that yet. I just need to be sad for a little longer. Like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, of course. And so I always really appreciate people who don't go there. They're just, okay, I get it. Like, that's it. And maybe they'll ask a question, maybe they won't. Maybe it's just like, yeah, cool. And so his dad taking that, God, that's so good. Every character is, but what, you know what? I don't know where to start. So, okay. Going back to cinematography first, because
yeah, let's do it.
I think that's the other big difference in this movie versus, like, I think from here, is it Royal Tenenbaums? I don't know. He launches very hard into the Wes Anderson universe after this. And this film is much darker, lighting wise, darker than all of his other later films, I think. And maybe that's just because of budget. Maybe he just didn't have enough budget to get all the lights he wanted, or at least all the time that he needed to set them all up and shoot. This is a lot. And I would be surprised if this wasn't like a very quick shoot. I can feel that sometimes in the camera work. Like I imagine, and this is me projecting, I imagine a lot of this had to be handheld because they simply didn't have time to set up dollies and cranes and all the other, you know, things that he likes in his films, because normally he likes very locked, you know, shots. And then once this had some success, I'm sure he got all those toys and more lights and more time to do his thing. But it's dark. You know, there's a ton of handheld shots in here. Some of the framing is maybe a little wonky because they're just moving. And so I bet this is probably like a 25, 30-day shoot. And I bet most of his films now are like 60 days, 90 days, just taking all the time in the world. And so I think that's why I also like this one more. It feels more raw. And that plays into the writing so well because it's so much more emotional, than I think a lot of his films are, in the sense of it doesn't feel like over the top emotional. I feel like whenever he dips into the emotions in other films, it feels so coordinated. And here it just feels very human, just like people are going through things and coming out of them as they will. And that's really cool. And so the other difference, the framing, like the center framing, like generally his later films are super symmetrical, right? They're like, probably you measure it to, he's probably got like rulers out there. Like, well, this plant needs to come in, you know, 7 feet, and it's like 100 feet away from the camera, and that 7 feet moves it like a millimeter, you know, it's like, okay, that's it. And this, it's not like that at all. Like, and the center framing in all his other films, I think, are used for that awkward humor aspect, that this is not doing at all. Like center framing of the headshots here, those close-ups, those headshots, like in the library, that scene we played, whenever we move into those center frames, it's not to be funny, it's not to be quirky, it's to be personal. And it's about them connecting and being vulnerable and honest. Same thing whenever you see Blume, whenever he goes to Rosemary's house, and he's like, you know, did Max have, it's pretty hilarious. Like he's showing up thinking, well, he's using it as an excuse to go see her, but he's like, oh, did Max have plans for us? Like a museum tour or something? Like they're the kids and he's the adult. Like that's really funny and endearing. But they move into those center frames, those compositions where like Blume is in the middle and Rosemary is in the middle. And it's to reveal how vulnerable they are with each other in that moment. Specifically Blume, as he's kind of on a limb there, alone, without Max, and he's trying to stir something up with her. And he's just kind of feeling boyish, you know, standing in front of a girl in her yard. And she starts to feel that vulnerability too, as she realizes, you know, I need an excuse to hang out with him too. And so there's just these really nice moments. And then later, after she gets fired and is confronting Max, because Max shows up, right? And he's like, oh, you need help? Which is this whole seesaw moment in the previous scene, because he shows up to get her fired, finds out she's fired, and she's like, you shouldn't fire her. Like, what are you doing? And so it's all, or she's leaving, I guess. What do you, and so he goes to her classroom to like try to win her back, so to speak. And then they move into the center compositions of putting her in the middle and Max in the middle, and she's confronting him now. and being vulnerable, and he's feeling vulnerable and embarrassed, and she's attacking, right? What did you think was going to happen? We'd have sex? And he's like, that's a vulgar way to put it. And this is where it starts to reveal how much of a child he really still is, because he's still so romanticizing sex. And she's like, not if you've ever fucked before. And she's like, this is very adult. Like, what's up? And the look of humiliation is so full of hurt. And by isolating him in the frame that way, you can kind of feel his vulnerability and like everything that he's going through in that moment. And he just does not use these kind of compositions in the same way, I think, after this film. Maybe he does, and you just got to really look for it. But I think it's really just to be awkward, to put someone in that frame and like a wide angle close up. It just adds this kind of quirky, humorous aspect to it. And here it's just a complete inversion of all that. He's saving it for emotional moments, to put the characters front and center on their own and display how they're really feeling to the other person they're in the scene with. Like that's so cool. And I think why I also love this film probably more. It's the humor. I completely agree with you. This isn't a comedy. Like, it's got comedy in it, but really it's a drama with humor. And that's what works for me. The other thing, cinematography wise, blocking through pain, and that's P-A-N-E, and that's a double entendre. You're not welcome. Like whenever he goes for one of the early times, to her classroom, and she's putting feed in the aquariums, right? And we're outside, we're watching them. We just keep dollying along through the window. It's so nice because they keep putting them in the same window pane, right? With the frames on the outside. We don't see it until Max, this is where he's saved Latin. He's going to her to brag about it. And we're watching him tell her through the glass from the outside, and we're dollying in sync with Max. And they're paired together in that same window until he finds out she's married. Then after he finds that out, we dolly over, and now there's a window frame that's separating them. Suddenly there's something between them. And that's whenever he's finding out more about her deceased husband. And now he's telling her that his mom is dead. And then we slide over again. We put them back together in the same window pane. And so it's really nice that the window frame paneling acts as a visual barrier to like reinforce the obstacle that stands between them. Her deceased husband, and then represents when that has kind of gone away, whenever he gives something of himself as well, which is talking about his dead mom. And in other movies, like saying you have a dead parent is like, oh, every other movie would now make his dad the love interest instead of his buddy, the business tycoon.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So that's a nice wrinkle. So story and writing wise, the humor, right? We have dry humor, which works through contrast. So a lot of it is how he under delivers in a moment. For whatever's happening, we're going to under deliver it. So like at the very opening, we start in this classroom with Max solving an incredibly hard geometry problem, right? And the teacher just diligently explains this will be unsolvable for these kids, even my MIT professor, Dr. Leakey. And so he's like building up this whole thing, like no one's going to be able to solve it. If you do, I'll make sure you never touch another math book for the rest of your life. And so Max gets up, folds his newspaper, grabs his espresso, and goes to the chalkboard. And while sipping, solves it between sips. Puts it down, looks at the teacher. The teacher, you got it. And so it's like no surprise or awe. It's just completely underplaying the emotion because he just says it as underwhelmed as he can. You got it. And then the class explodes, right? Everyone's cheering. And that's just a dry humor for the moment, that contrast. And so the same thing with that whole opening sequence of this great juxtaposition of that dream paired with meeting the principal and meeting Blume, and Blume is kind of taken with him, and the principal says he's one of the worst students we have. And so like, that's a great juxtaposition, right? The contrast is so funny. This isn't one of those movies where the kid has it all and he knows everything and he's got it together. This kid's delusional. Like, he does not have it together. His teacher references Latin America, and he thinks, yeah, well, we're getting Latin canceled. And she's like, this is different. This is Central America. And he's like, oh, yeah. Moving on. like he gets every reference she makes, he completely misses. And most other movies about like a really smart, kid, they're outwitting the adults. Like they're the adult in the room. And this is not the case. This kid is not, he is not getting permits. He is wrecking everything. And that adds a whole other layer of humor. Especially because Blume is falling right in line with it. Like almost every character in this film is a bit of an idiot. Like even the principal to some degree or another is a bit of a buffoon. And yet one of the things I really love about this movie is Rosemary, because she is like the only character in here who doesn't know she's in a comedy.
Yeah.
She doesn't fit in this world at all. And I love her for it. Because she's like, what are you doing? And like, she gets confused very easily at him, like refilling her drink and like swapping her markers. And what is this?
And you have to remember when this came out. This is not like, there's been a lot of, teacher student kind of like relationship stuff, situations that have come out in the last 20 years, 20, 30 years, 25 years since then. But it wasn't really a thing that was talked about, or maybe it happened, I don't know, but that it wasn't really a thing like it is, really in the forefront today. This 1998, is like different era, say.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think that works really well. And then going back to everything we've been talking about, the heartbeat of this film, like the fact that it has heart is really cool. And some of that is really good setups. Going back to his dad, like it's a proper setup for the payoff with his dad, because the first way we were introduced to him is to actually meet him in his element at the barbershop. And then when Max starts talking about his dad to like Blume, he can lie and say that his dad's a neurosurgeon, and we immediately get the lie and everything that it implies. This kid is embarrassed about his dad. That's a really nice setup. Because if you don't, I think the way I often see this kind of get done wrong is they'll do it backwards. They'll introduce the lie, and then we won't know it's a lie until we meet the dad at the barbershop later on, for instance. And then it's like, it just doesn't click really as strongly. Like eventually you get it, but that immediacy isn't really there. Here, we have a really nice extended element with his dad kind of fudging his paper, like, I need you to sign this. And it's just like, oh man, this dad's he's a different dad. And we kind of click into our head very strongly. That's his dad. This is their dynamic. And then whenever he starts saying later on, he's a neurosurgeon, we're like, whoa, oh snap. Damn, Max. Like, why you got to be that way? Like, that's messed up. And it's really nice because it introduces an opportunity for later on to pay that off whenever he introduces Blume.
And to add to that, we find out very early on why he's there. Because like normally, a barber can't afford to send his kid to a private school like this, but he's there on scholarship because he wrote that play, which we continually go back to. He reminds everyone of why he's there multiple times. So that answers that piece of like how he's even there in the first place. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. It all works together to spell out or flesh out who this character is, and everything that's going on in his orbit, so to speak. And so that allows, and then another really wonderful heartbeat moment is at the end, he introduces his play by dedicating it to his mom and Edward Appleby. It's a friend of a friend. Oh,
so good.
Melt you. And then it's so good after all this humor and silliness. And then you drop that on us, and then you raise the curtains, and we see like this, I don't even know what to call it, the Heaven and Hell, which feels like a play on Full Metal Jacket, but with a different ending. And it's so good. And and you see the jets and the pyrotechnics and the fireworks, and you intercut all the parents like putting on the goggles and the earmuffs, and like, so
love it,
genius. But that whole arc of Max actually growing, starting to care for others more than himself, and the payoff at the very end is so good. We get to the end of the movie, and we finally get Rosemary and Max into a scene together again after, I don't know, it feels like an age. But they finally, for the first time, have a fully honest conversation. But they use the play as a screen. They give it this double meaning. And it's just so wonderful because it allows the audience to feel the feelings instead of the characters. And we imbue the characters with our feelings. What happens? They start dancing together, or they're about to start dancing. And she gives him a compliment, right? Like, I really liked your play, or whatever she says. I really liked your play. He says, oh, it was okay. At least nobody got hurt. And that's a reference on its face about the finger getting blown off at the last school. And so he's like, at least nobody got hurt. And she says, no one but you. Boom. Now she's referencing on the face that he got hit accidentally in the middle of the play. And he gets to say, nah, I didn't get hurt that bad. Nice. That's a really wonderful moment because now we know they're not actually talking about the play, even though they fully are technically talking about the play. On that subtextual level, we understand that they're talking about something more. And that's just so good because their relationship now has a layer that the audience gets to feel and engage with, had that kind of sentimentality about it without the actors ever having to spell it out, to each other. Like that little coded conversation is the stuff that really makes audiences feel more deeply than just keeping it on the surface and just everyone saying how they're feeling. But giving characters an excuse to say how they're feeling is so much better. And so that leads us right into that great slow motion final shot of the entire cast dancing happily, close the curtains in the same way that we opened them at the start of the film. And it's so good. We get resolution and an emotional send-off within 90 seconds. That's how you end a damn movie, man. Holy crap.
And the music is fantastic in this whole movie. I mean, I think all Wes Anderson films are like really known for their music, and it's really good. But Mark Mothersbaugh is just a master. He did most of the music in here. Ooh. Of course, there's a few others that are actual songs like The Faces and John Lennon and Cat Stevens and stuff, but Mark Mothersbaugh did most of the music here. So he did that song at the end too. No, that wasn't his song. That was another, I don't know. But there are several songs. I think the kite flying song was my favorite. The song that they play in the kite flying scene, it was my favorite. And I believe that's him. But yeah, the music is just fantastic, and the way they go out is just beautiful. Yeah.
So good. That's all I got, man. I adore this movie, and yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Wes Anderson with a tiny budget having to make do again. I felt like they were just flying through setups on this film, and so I'd love to see him pressed to actually, I don't know.
I mean, he was only 29 years old when he made this, so he was probably still trying to find his visual identity, and I think that he sort of found it, and then like went, like you said, full bore. Oh, this is my style. I'm going to go hardcore into it. But yeah, the story here is just beautiful. Did you notice? I watched it a couple of times, but I wanted to ask you if you noticed. You remember the scene of Herman and Max in the elevator when they go to see Guggenheim, and Herman is like double smoking 2 cigarettes. Like, he's got a cigarette that's half done in his mouth, and he lights another one, and he walks out of the elevator. And there's a really weird jump cut. I don't know if you noticed it.
I noticed a lot of weird edits, to be honest.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was, it's the two shot of them in the elevator. Elevator opens. He's drinking, and then he puts it in the under the towel, the bottle under the towel, and then he walks out, and he's out. So Max is still in the elevator, and Herman is standing outside the elevator. And then it's just like a jump cut. It just cuts to him again, but maybe just like a couple of feet of a different view, but it's still a 2-shot. It's not like we're going to cut close on Herman or we're going to, there's no reason to have the cut. What I think is that because he delivers the line and then he walks off out of camera or they cut or something, like it's the end of their communication. And I think that maybe Wes just really liked the line he delivered or how he delivered it in a different take. And he was just like, F it, just cut. Let's do a jump cut here. And I don't know, I resonated with that a lot because I was thinking, man, this is like a seminal film for this guy and like, you know, has been around a long time. This is a great movie. And there's a jump cut in it, you know, that's non-motivated. There's no reason to have a cut. But we do, and it's not just having a cut, it's a jump cut. It's like, okay, all right. And I noticed it I've seen this movie, you know, like 5 times, but I'd never noticed it before, only because we do this podcast and now I look at those things. But I didn't know if you noticed it and if there was a motivation for you for that.
That's so anyway. Funny. No, I've been trying to replay it and I don't know, my streamer, whoever this is, Google Play is giving me hell. But I'll double check that. That's really funny. Yeah. I noticed a bunch of like awkward edits where I'm like, I think they missed a transitional moment here. And I just assumed every one of those moments had to do with, we didn't have enough time on the day to get a little bit more coverage to smooth some of this stuff out. Yeah, probably.
You're probably totally right. And then also remember this. I'm pretty sure this is film. You know.
Yeah.
So
35.
it's not as easy to edit. Yeah, it's 1998. So they didn't have iPhones back then or whatever. Premiere Pro wasn't around. Back then.
Just the Avid.
Right. So you only have so much footage that you can get, you know, like film has never been cheap to use or to develop. So yeah. Anyway.
Nice.
Especially when you're 29. Like how do you get the budget, you know, from the studio for that? So
yeah. How many that's all I got, man. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think that I love your thoughts. I think you're spot on with the story and the character development, and that's why I resonate the most with this Wes Anderson film. Even though he's got some really, really great other films too, but yeah, it's beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I just double checked, and they shot for 50 days, so that's pie in my eye. Really, $10 million budget, 50 days of shooting. Well done.
Oh, and it was at St. John's.
St. John's.
Not at Bel Air. It was in Bel Air, which is a place, a city, a town in Houston. But it was filmed at St. John's and at, what was it? 2 high schools that are across the street from each other. St. John's is the private school where they shot in the church, and then the grounds were at this other school. Where was it? Hold on. I don't remember. Anyway, but he went to St. John's. Wes Anderson went to St. John's.
Whoa. Damn.
Yeah. So some of these shots were actually in some of the classrooms he studied in.
Oh, that's cool. That had to be really fun to go back and be the man, be on campus and be the dude.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? Oh, it was Lamar High School. So St. John's and Lamar, but he went to St. John's High School.
That's so cool.
Anyway.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well done, man. What are you going to recommend this week?
I'm going to stick with Wes Anderson, right? Because he's got a lot of films that are really great and up there, and I'm going to recommend Grand Budapest Hotel, which is just a lot of fun. You know, be prepared for very Wes Anderson stuff, like super symmetrical shots, you know, very dry humor and delivery, but really entertaining.
So good. Nice. I am going to recommend a drama. If you want a more dramatized version of this kind of story, then I'm going to recommend An Education. It also stars Olivia Williams. Even though she's more of a supporting actor, this is more of a film for Carey Mulligan and Peter Sarsgaard. Peter
Sarsgaard.
Sarsgaard. Thank you. I was gonna never get there. Like, what is it? Yeah. So it's about a young girl. I think she's like, I don't know, a teenager, 15 or 16 or so, dating an older guy, and so it's very dramatic and really, really good. Yeah. So in education, it's probably streaming somewhere. So yeah, check that out and stay tuned for next week. We're going to dive into the new Robert Eggers film, Nosferatu, or Nosferatu. I don't know. I'm sure they'll tell us how to pronounce it in the movie. Yeah. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a note, leave us a review, and let us know the kind of things you want to talk about. And we'd appreciate it. And a big shout out to Alexander for dropping us several cups of coffee into our bin. Sir, we doff our cap to you. Thanks, man. Merry Christmas, or whatever you may be celebrating out in Germany. So, thank you so much. And if you want to comment on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Rushmore.
I want to preamble this quote of the day.
Yeah.
This might be one of my favorites. And I love that it's from Bill Murray, because it's so Bill Murray.
It's so Bill Murray.
It's so Bill Murray. And he just so good. Bill Murray is one of my all-time favorites. Anyway, our quote of the day is from Bill Murray. The more relaxed you are, the better you are at everything. And I don't know why I'm resonating with this right now. I think maybe because I'm leaving my job at the end of the year, and I'm very tense and stressed out and like just working my butt off, what's the next chapter in my life? What am I going to be doing? And I think I needed this, honestly, because I 100% agree with it. And I need to make it a part of my life.
It's hard to stay relaxed when you care about something. And I think it always goes back to, I guess it depends on whatever it is you're doing, right? But I think you can be more relaxed the more prepared you are.
Yes.
And so by preparing, you enter into a moment with the knowledge that you know what's going to happen to a large degree, because you've already studied, you've already gone through it in your head, you've done everything you can to take care of tomorrow, today. And when tomorrow gets here, you can suddenly be like, okay, this is the best I'm going to be able to do, and what's going to be will be. And I think that knowledge gives you as much relaxation as you can muster. And it's just wonderful advice, because the more relaxed you are, the more control you have over yourself. Like, it's hard to control yourself through tension.
100%, man. You're speaking truth right now. But it's like, I love that you said that it's hard when you care. Because you feel, I think as humans, at least me, we're both doers. We're both like we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to make this thing. It's going to be great. I want it to be great. I'm going to put everything I've got into it, which means that if you don't feel like you're working really hard towards something, or that every movement and everything that you're doing is towards that, then like you're not doing enough, or you're failing, or there's something to be said for the Kobe Bryant way of always be working, but there's also something to be said with how you're working, right? Like if you watch Kobe Bryant play basketball, it was effortless. It was like,
yeah.
And that is because what you just said, it's just great. Prepare for tomorrow today, but you got to prepare it in a relaxed way. Just know that things are going to be all right. Do your best, but do something. And do it with love, but just chill. Everything's gonna be all right. And sometimes you need a reminder of that, man.
Yeah.
When you care about something, or you want something really bad, it's really easy to just get frustrated and tense. And it's hard for me, like having kids too. Like at the end of the day, they're fighting, and you just want to go to bed, like I'm done, I can't handle it, and you get frustrated, and just to stay relaxed. It's a good reminder. It's a great quote. Probably one of my favorites that we've done on the show, honestly.
That's worth remembering down the road for sure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had a blast talking about this film, my film.
Yeah, baby.
It belongs to me now.
That's right.
Ignore. I did watch the credits just to make sure, but no, I'm not in the credits.
Oh, jerks.
Darn. You know, who knows? Maybe they listed all 150 kids that showed up in that scene. I don't know. Credits nowadays are super long, and there's like thousands of names in them. So, you know, back then it wasn't that way. Anyway, thank you for sticking with us. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If there's a film you'd like to see us pick apart, share it. We would love to hear from you, and who knows, maybe one day we'll do it. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.